Welcome to this webinar, which covers basic concepts in offering spiritual companionship to adult survivors of child sexual abuse. This is an overview. There are 9 other sessions, all of them are brief. The strange qualification I bring to this program is I'm a survivor of clergy abuse from about the time I was 7 until I was 19 years old. I've undergone 15 years of therapy, 30 years of 12-step programs, personal reflection and prayer, a great deal of reading, and other life events. The genesis of this webinar is that I currently work with the outreach program in the Catholic Diocese of Arlington, Virginia, to reach out to survivors of clergy abuse and others in authority. This is not the diocese where I grew up or was abused. And when I came here, Father Mark Mealy encouraged me to use my story to find my own healing spiritually and also to help others. That seems to have played out, and recently he suggested perhaps I could do something as a webinar that people could watch on their own schedule and benefit from the workshops and retreats we do here. However, I underscore, this has been prepared all by myself, solo. The Diocese of Arlington has had no supervision or direction. Neither have any of the other diocese or Catholic groups that I help, including even the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has had no input or direction. I'm just doing this by myself, not paid. I have written a very brief book called Restoring Sanctuary, which recounts a kind of chronicle of encounters with people who helped me keep the faith through all of the years of struggle and journey that I underwent. And most of my story follows something I call the trajectory of hope, which is from a state of victimhood through being a survivor and forward into surviving. There is a bit of an arc like this in most survivor stories. Note that I call people survivors and not victims of child abuse, because we are survivors if we're standing in front of you. And what we do get, though, is the idea of what is a victim versus someone who's thriving or surviving. And a victim, of course, is the person who's undergoing the abuse, is the child. But then there's the impact of the abuse. The impact lasts a long time sometimes, well into adulthood. It's a cringe of pain. It can continue well into our late adult lives, well into our dreams. Until care is administered to the wounds, we will suffer them. It's looked at a distinctly different way. Victim is often a mindset. That's simply because that was how we experienced life as a victim, before we even knew there were options. And now there will be options as survivors, because we're adult, for one thing. Recovery can begin because we are hopefully in a safe place. At some point, most, not all of us, will come face to face with what happened. Sometimes it takes a crisis to get us there. Sometimes it just happens. We thought we got past it. We buried it. We tried to ignore it, only to find out that wasn't possible. So we're usually pretty shocked when we come to face with the fact that we need to spend time recovering from what happened to us, and that's when recovery begins. The process is messy and painful. It can disrupt life's routines and relationships. This mess, this pain does pass, I know from personal experience, but you really need to keep at it. And then there are something that happens that many people recount during recovery, but it varies greatly person to person. Some survivors I know get to a place where it's as if the past is gone, the pain is gone, and all the power it has over their day has been removed. Most survivors I know, including myself, enjoy some of that, sometimes. We've all integrated the memories into our current lives. We've all learned to manage the lasting impact. What challenges remain will vary widely survivor to survivor, and hopefully faith will have helped us get to a place of thriving to the degree we are able, and to continue to survive by managing what lasts as wounds in our My role in this is to encourage anyone who wants to be encouraged to integrate their Christian and their Catholic faith into their recovery from child sexual abuse and other child abuse. And also to encourage reconciliation through our own healing process. That will be reconciliation with the fact that we were abused, reconciliation within families, within communities, and within the Catholic Church in my case. I do this 3 different ways: by focusing on the relational nature of our lives. In this sense, we do reflect our Creator because He is a relation, God, Son, and Holy Spirit. Also, I encourage creativity in the people with whom I work. In part, that puts the Creator in touch with the creature and animates our life with the Holy Spirit. And also, I rely a great deal on language because people who've survived abuse, like myself, are very familiar with the power of lies. And it was in reaching out and understanding that there was one word, and that's capital W, that could not be perverted by abusers or the people who enabled them, that gave me a grounding from which I could move forward. What I offer people is writing if people need articles for what they're doing. I chat with people about their programs if they're trying to develop them. I offer workshops and seminars, retreats, sometimes alone and sometimes with others, as well as these webinars, and I give speeches. This series in particular, besides this overview, will cover a number of... It will cover, as a second session, the lasting impact of child abuse on adult survivors, underscoring the fact that the lasting impact is not permanent. People can move through recovery. It will talk about your likely experiences in first encounters with the adult survivors and make suggestions how to keep those encounters simple and full of the impact of the Spirit and love. Then there'll be a session that's brief on the early emotions that survivors experience in healing and recovery, and also how that might have an impact on your interactions with them, and again, with some ideas of how you can understand and handle them. I'll talk about goals, but really what I'll be talking about in the 5th session are visions and hope for what well lives can look like, and what's not reasonable to expect as well. In the 6th session, which is a little more in depth, I'll talk about very practical steps for preparing yourself, even before you prepare the space where you'll meet people, how you want to have resources at your fingertips and where to find those resources. And then in very practical terms, in the 7th session, I'll talk about how you can create welcome, safety, a sense of ease for someone who turns to you, especially in the first sessions when someone's trying to decide whether they're comfortable with you at all. There are some responses I'll be talking about generally, but then we'll focus on the really key responses that help survivors at every stage and in every instance of the recovery journey. Then I'll talk a little bit more, step back and talk about boundaries, both knowing your own and reinforcing those for the survivor and family as a process of healing, as a process of asserting health, and encouraging reconciliation even. And last, as a kind of review as well, I'll talk about your best role in the patchwork that really is the recovery for somebody who's using as many resources as possible to overcome the trauma they survived as a child. This will in other ways be looked at as a kind of exercise in humility in terms of what you can and what you can't affect. So that's the series to expect. I've posted each of these individually on YouTube, and there's also a summary of the basic concepts to follow that lasts about 25 minutes and weaves in my own story and how I came to these conclusions, as well as a quick review in case you want to take a look at brushing up just before you meet a survivor. On YouTube, which is my channel, is Restoring Sanctuary, which I assume you found if you found this video. There are the 10 basic concepts, but then also I have a very practical how-to do's and don'ts of working with survivors of abuse. I also have some very interesting interviews. One is with Dr. Robert Orsi, who's interviewed many, many survivors of clergy abuse, exploring what is their faith like and how have they preserved and grown in faith. And last, there's a very brief kind of crash course in what the Catholic Church has done. It's called Catholic Amends, and it covers the 5 main reforms and amends that the Catholic Church has fully operationalized in its own progress to make amends for what happened and move forward getting ever. Last, I've written a workbook with Father Louis Fiorelli, an oblate of Francis de Sales, and it's about 400 pages, and it's meant to be used in a kind of point-counterpoint dialogue with survivors. It could either help prepare you, it could be used by families and friends to understand how to support the spiritual growth of someone in recovery, and of course it may be useful to. So thank you. I look forward to helping you in any way possible as you move forward. If you've got questions, requests, even suggestions or criticisms for that matter, here's my email address. Please feel free to approach me. Thank you.